Hello and welcome to a brand new special Unsourced Raw Presents, or at least that's what I'm calling it, because it's more like a Unsourced Raw news update, or even a sequel / extension of one of my previous uploads, specifically the No Way Home review and my theory on what was going on with that movie and why they seem to be sidelining Uncle Ben. And if you want to check that out, I recommend it, especially like the last couple minutes where I really get into why I think Uncle Ben wasn't in that film and wasn't referenced in that film at all, and why he's been such a non-existent part of the MCU trilogy so far. On that note, as many people have already talked about and has been sort of proliferating around the Spider-Man, Marvel, Sony sort of news landscape, we do have plot details for the upcoming Madam Web film. And, well, basically it seems to be a Terminator kind of homage, rip-off kind of thing, where Peter Parker, Spider-Man, is being targeted by villains before he's even born, as some villain, possibly Morlun and the Energy Vampire from the Spider-Verse comics, are going back to try and kill his mother and Uncle Ben before he's even born, and Madam Web and a team of Spider-Woman from the multiverse are there to try and stop him and save his life. Now, one thing about this is that yes, we are getting Uncle Ben in this film, which means that it's going to be the first Uncle Ben in like 6 years? 7? I forget when Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out. But yeah, it's been for quite a while because he wasn't in the MCU high school trilogy, as I guess it can be called now. And there was a lot of theories about why that was. When Marvel first brought Spider-Man back into the fold, there was this thing where they wanted to jump right into it. They didn't want to like rehash the origin, which meant Uncle Ben. So they decided to set it way past that initial incident, and Spider-Man is well into his year 1 phase. Like, he's already past all that, and we get like a really oblique reference in Civil War and Homecoming to, oh, something that happened last year, but no other detail, and it's kept really vague and really unsatisfying. And then in Far From Home, all we get is like 3 small initials on Peter Parker's luggage. And that's it, like no further references. And even in No Way Home, when we have the Spider Brothers, Tobey and Andrew Garfield there, and they mention Uncle Ben, not only would that have been the perfect time for, Tom Holland's Spider-Man to mention his Uncle Ben, but not only does he not, they give like that inciting incident that, with great responsibility line and death and emotional impact to Aunt May, which I'm not against. I think that's a really fun idea to, switch things up. But not only isn't he mentioned when the other two bring up their Uncle Ben, but when we see Aunt May's grave, there's no mention of there being grave for Uncle Ben ever or at all, and it's not even next to Aunt May's, so where is the grave and why aren't we like at least shown? That would have been like the third most perfect time to sort of really bring that into canon, but to no avail, no dice. So people have been trying to say like, okay, that's not really something that's important because we have Aunt May, and trying to consolidate their feelings about this issue on that route. But now that we have an Uncle Ben in Madam Web, I'm seeing this really fascinating thing where folks are trying to sort of co-opt it into the MCU. Now there are people saying that, oh, Kevin Feige is behind this film, it's a secret MCU film, he's producing it, creating the story, all this ridiculous stuff that hasn't even really been verified. Like, he's not listed as producer on Madam Web. I want to say that right now, because that's the thing that's kind of being touted as proof that this is a secret MCU prequel. At the end, it's going to turn out that this is the MCU and it's not the Sonyverse, even though it's being made by Sony and they're trying to buff out their Sonyverse. So why would they waste a movie on a universe that, as for all accounts, doesn't want them in it? Like, every time Kevin Feige's ever been asked about it, he has this like physical, blunt, negative reaction. So I have no idea why this is even a possibility for people. But what it says to me is that people are just unsatisfied with what the MCU has done. They have found it so lackluster, so unfulfilling, that the MCU has sidelined Uncle Ben so hard and just left, like very kind of a noticeable void in Peter Parker and Spider-Man's kind of backstory, that they're just reaching out, that they're trying to get whatever they can to like patch that over. Which I think is emblematic of like a larger sort of failure with those movies. Like, yes, of course, they wanted to skip over the origin, but then they also want to redo the origin. And I think when you do that, when you want to have your cake and eat it too, there's a big kind of seam that's very noticeable when you're trying to stitch those two opposing philosophies together. So while I think that yes, giving Aunt May the Uncle Ben moment and the Uncle Ben treatment was a really sort of interesting thing to do, that's something you should have done like in a Spider-Man origin movie, not like, oh, okay, this is year 2, this is year 3, and we're gonna do it right now. And it's like, see, you thought it was going to be like the typical origin, but it actually happens way later in his career. That's not clever. Like, it could have been clever, if you had done it at the very beginning, but doing it so late in the game is it just makes that crack. It just makes that forced aspect of like wanting to be different much more noticeable. And I don't think people are really sort of there yet when it comes to accepting that, Uncle Ben might not be ever in the MCU. Or if he is, he might be alive. I'm talking about what Sony is doing. I'm saying that like the only way to really bring Uncle Ben in at this point, because of how much of a non-entity he's been in the entire like movie series so far, is if he's alive. Like, oh, okay, that's why Aunt May got the Uncle Ben treatment. That's why she got the death. That's why she got the great responsibility line. Because Uncle Ben is still alive and possibly a character. Maybe he could take the Aunt May role. Who knows? But yeah, no, it's something that's so interesting that the biggest detractors of the Sonyverse are really bending over backwards to make this fit, to make Madam Web fit into the MCU storyline. I've heard wild things. I've heard things like, okay, even if this is the Sonyverse, maybe it's 99% canon. Like, it's an alternate universe, but it's like 99% canon except for like the end. Or, oh, maybe Madam Web fails and baby Peter Parker dies, which is like the most like callous stuff I've ever heard from a Spider-Man fan. Well, Peter Parker's baby dies, and that leaves open MCU Peter Parker to take the reins of the Sonyverse too, both universes. And like that is just so uninteresting, and just I don't see Sony doing that, because as I said, they're trying to create their own kind of universe here. They're trying to buff it out, and I don't see them wasting Madam Web to support and buttress and sort of buffer a universe like that. Like I said, could care less about them. But I just wanted to bring attention once more that whatever's going on with Uncle Ben in the MCU, it's spilling over into Madam Web and Sony discourse, And I think that's something that the fans of the MCU Spider-Man series so far, have to really sort of contend with and really sort of come to grips with. That if you're unsatisfied with what the MCU has done, you need to process those as actual criticisms for the MCU, not sort of like waylay it onto something that you don't really have any fondness for either. Because like, given the reception and the animosity between these two fandoms, the Sony Spider-Man Universe fandom and the MCU Spider-Man fandom, this is not something that would ever work out. And so yeah, I think Uncle Ben and MCU got really short thrift. I think that they didn't really know what they wanted to do, and it shows in each film. And it comes to a horrifyingly muddled and messy end in No Way Home. But as someone who enjoys the Sony films, I think that, hey, it's really interesting, and I think it's really optimistic, and it has me looking forward to this film. That we have like 5 big movie appearances for Spider-Man in the MCU that had like almost no Uncle Ben mentioned at all, and now we're getting this movie, this Madam Web film, where he's gonna be like the core of it, where he's gonna be like the emotional core, especially their way of introducing their own Spider-Man for the Sonyverse. They're getting to Uncle Ben this way, and then seeing that origin play out as it usually does, could hit harder. It could actually have a lot of impact. So fingers crossed for that. But I did want to bring this to attention where the MCU has done, is a real shame. And even though I do enjoy aspects of each of the, high school trilogy films, that is going to be the sorest mark that's ever done. So fingers crossed that Sony does better with Uncle Ben in Madam Web. It's an interesting concept, and I think Adam Scott, is kind of fantastic casting, because he does have that sort of Parkery nature to him. So yeah, fingers crossed. And let me know what you think below. Do you think Uncle Ben is going to be done right in Madam Web? Do you think that Aunt May being the Uncle Ben substitute in the MCU was a good idea? But let me know below. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and see you next time.